My wife went on a joke blind double date to help her friend, and now that she's in love with another man plus update. So, here it goes. Never thought I'd be writing a story like this, but I guess life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. I'm Dan, not my real name, but whatever, and I've been married to Emma for 5 years. I thought we had the perfect marriage, happy, stable, no major issues, especially with our 2 kids, Jack, who's 4, and Sophie, who's 2. Emma is funny, loving, the whole package. So, a few months ago, Emma's best friend, Laura, who's single, by the way, convinced her to sign up for this thing, a blind double date. Yeah, you read that right. You're probably thinking, Dan, that sounds like a terrible idea from the start. And trust me, I thought the same thing. But Emma assured me it was all in good fun. Laura had been trying to get her set up with some of her friends, and Emma was, as she put it, just playing along to get Laura off her back. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I trusted Emma. I didn't think anything of it. I mean, come on, it's not like she was actually going to go fall for one of these guys, right? But here's where things started to go downhill. At first, Emma would come home from these blind dates laughing about how awkward the guys were, how they didn't know how to keep a conversation going, or how one of them couldn't stop talking about his amazing collection of comic books. It was funny, and I laughed along with her, happy that she had a good time. It wasn't a big deal until it was. Soon, these blind dates became regular. Every week, sometimes more than once a week, Emma would go out with Laura and these random guys. The dates started to last longer and longer. Emma told me they were fun, nothing serious. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She was coming back more distant, less interested in spending time with me and the kids. And when she did spend time with us, she was often distracted, her mind elsewhere. I tried not to overthink it, but the little things started to add up. One day, I got home early from work, and Emma wasn't home yet. She had gone out with Laura and a guy named James, who I had heard her mention before but hadn't thought much of. This time, I wasn't sure why, but I felt this weird, anxious feeling. I tried to shake it off and went about my day. But when Emma came home, something was different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but she seemed off. She was quieter than usual. Her smile wasn't the same. It was like she wasn't even happy to be home. Hey, how was the date? I asked casually, not wanting to jump to conclusions. Oh, it was fine, she said, her voice flat. She didn't even seem excited about it anymore. James is different. I guess he's just a little more interesting than the others. I didn't think much of it at first. But then, the text started. She'd leave her phone lying around, and I couldn't help but notice the notifications. Flirty messages from James. I miss you, can't stop thinking about you, and my heart just sank. I knew something was happening. This wasn't just harmless fun anymore. I didn't confront her immediately. I couldn't. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was all just a silly phase she was going through. But one night, when she was in the shower, I couldn't help myself. I grabbed her phone and started reading. I know it's wrong, but at this point, I was desperate to understand what was going on. What I found tore me apart. The texts weren't just casual anymore. They were filled with words like, "You make me feel alive," and "I can't stop thinking about you when I'm with him." My stomach churned. I was in complete shock. It wasn't just emotional cheating anymore. She'd crossed the line. She liked this guy. She was emotionally, and likely physically, invested in him. I confronted her that night, and the coldness that came from her was chilling. When I asked about James, she tried to deny it at first. "It's nothing, Dan," she said, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. The words tumbled out. She confessed that she'd kissed him, that she'd started feeling things she hadn't felt in years. But the real gut punch came next. She told me, "I don't know if I love you anymore." She said it so casually. Like it was something she had been thinking about for a while but just hadn't told me yet. As if it didn't matter. As if I didn't matter. I was completely blindsided. My wife, the woman I loved, the mother of our 2 kids, was telling me she was in love with another man. And the worst part? She wasn't even sorry. There were no tears, no apologies, just an attitude of indifference, like she was inconvenienced by the situation. As if that wasn't enough, she actually had the nerve to blame me. You never really see me anymore, Dan. It's like you don't even care. I've been feeling invisible for months. This whole time, I've been stuck in this routine with you, and I just need something different. James sees me. He makes me feel special again. I was floored. It wasn't my fault she was out there seeking validation from some guy. It wasn't my fault she was letting her own insecurities tear apart our family. But she didn't care. She was already gone. The worst part of this whole situation? She wasn't even apologetic. The more I pressed her, the more her attitude turned sour. Maybe I am happier with him, she snapped at one point. Maybe I want to see where this goes. You wouldn't understand. You're so predictable. She started mocking me. Dismissing me like I was some kind of fool for thinking that we had something special. You're just not exciting enough for me anymore, Dan, she said. You're stuck in your little comfortable world. And I don't want to be stuck with you anymore. By the end of the night, I realized that this woman, the one I had married, the one I had loved and trusted, was a stranger to me now. She was cold, cruel, and heartless. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about our kids. All she cared about was herself, her own selfish needs, and whatever temporary excitement she could find with some guy she met on a blind date. The following days were a blur. She spent more time with James, and I had to watch her flaunt it. She told me she was trying to figure things out but refused to even look at me. There were no more I love yous, no more smiles, no more effort. Just a bitter, cold woman who had decided that her happiness came first, no matter what. She never gave me a real answer about where we stood. Instead, she kept throwing her affair in my face, getting more and more condescending as time went on. At one point, she told me, "Why are you still here, Dan? Just move out already. I don't need you anymore." So, I did. I packed up my things, and I left. I moved out of our house, away from the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Update. So, it's been a couple of weeks since I posted my original story. A lot has happened since then. To be honest, I didn't think this would turn into an ongoing saga, but here I am, still processing everything that's happened. First off, I just want to say thank you to all of you who reached out. Your words really helped me get through some of the toughest moments. I know a lot of people wanted updates, so here it is, the big one. A few days ago, Emma came back. I honestly wasn't expecting it. I didn't even know if she would, but she showed up at my apartment, standing at my door with tears in her eyes. I didn't even open the door at first, just stood there, staring at her through the peephole, trying to figure out what she was going to say. I let her in after a while, mostly out of curiosity, and, I guess, a little part of me still holding on to hope. Big mistake. I should have just left her outside. Anyway, she came in, and immediately, she started with the apologies. "I'm so sorry for everything, Dan. I've been thinking about what I did, and I miss you and the kids so much." She said she made a huge mistake. She said she wasn't thinking clearly when she left, and that now, after being with James for a while, she realized it wasn't what she wanted. I was what she wanted. Our family was what she wanted. You guys, it was like something out of a movie. She looked all sad, like she'd been through some emotional roller coaster. She told me that she missed the kids, missed our life, missed everything about being a family. She even admitted that she was wrong to tear our family apart, and that she regretted everything. But here's the thing, I could barely look at her. I could barely listen to her. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She was crying, saying how she wanted things to go back to normal, that she wanted us to be us again. She talked about the kids, how she missed Jack's laugh and Sophie's little hugs, how she couldn't stand being away from them. And then, she said the words that really hit me, "I made a mistake, Dan. I was selfish. But I want to come home. I want us to be a family again." I stood there for a moment, just processing it all. I thought about everything, about the betrayal, the pain, the coldness she showed me when she walked away, and how, in those moments, she didn't even seem to care about me or the kids. It didn't matter how much she cried or how sorry she looked now. I'm sorry, but I can't just forget. I can't just pretend like I didn't see what she did. She chose someone else over her family. She made a conscious decision to tear us apart. And the worst part? She didn't even think about what it would do to the kids. To Jack, who was old enough to notice that his mom was gone, and Sophie, who probably doesn't even understand why mommy wasn't around. I'll admit, it was hard. My heart did ache when she talked about the kids, but not for the reasons she thought. It hurt because I realized she doesn't get it. She doesn't understand that what she's asking for isn't just about coming home. It's about fixing something that's been broken beyond repair. It's about pretending that everything can just go back to the way it was, like none of this ever happened. She missed her old family life. She missed the routine, the stability, the kids. But guess what? I missed it too. I missed when things were good. I missed the woman she was when I first met her. But she's not that person anymore. And no matter how much she says she wants to come back, I know deep down that it's not for the right reasons. She's not coming back because she loves me. She's coming back because she's lonely and she's realized that the grass wasn't greener on the other side. I told her as much. I told her I couldn't just forgive her. I told her that she made her choice, and that I wasn't going to just open the door again and pretend like nothing had happened. And, honestly, I think she was a little shocked by my response. She started getting defensive, saying that I was punishing her, that I was being cold, that I was hurting her. But you know what? I don't care. She already hurt me and our kids. I didn't even let her see the kids. I couldn't let her just walk back into our lives after everything she did, pretending like she could just pick up where she left off. I needed to protect them, protect me. She didn't take it well. She tried to convince me to at least let her come back for the sake of the family, tried to make me feel guilty for not letting her make things right. But all I could think about was how she never considered how much pain this would cause, how she could just tear apart everything we built and leave without a second thought. I didn't give in. I told her that I'm not that person anymore, the guy who blindly forgives, who thinks everything can be fixed with a few heartfelt words. She wanted me to trust her again, but trust doesn't come back just because you say the right things. So, I told her no. I told her it was too late. And I meant it. I told her she had no right to ask for another chance, not after everything she'd done. I told her to go back to James, because that's who she really wanted. She was livid. She started yelling, telling me how selfish I was, how I was ruining everything. I've never seen her so angry. But honestly, I didn't care. It was just her trying to manipulate me, trying to get back to her comfort zone, trying to walk back into our lives after everything she'd done. In the end, she left. I didn't even try to stop her. I closed the door behind her, and that was it. No more second chances. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just taking things day by day. But I know one thing, I'm not going to let her wreck this family any more than she already has. I can't let her think she can just come back when it's convenient for her. The kids deserve more than that. I deserve more than that. TLDR, Emma came back, apologizing and saying she made a mistake, wanting to come home for the sake of the family. But after everything she did, I refused to take her back. She chose someone else, and I'm not going to let her come back just because things didn't work out with him. The kids and I are better off without her. Can't believe I'm back already with an update. Things took kind of a weird turn, so thought I would write it out for you all. Yesterday I came into our break room at work and Mark and John were there. As soon as I sat down, John got up and excused himself, saying he had something he forgot to do. I looked at Mark and finally just asked him why has John avoided me since my date with Sarah. What didn't you tell me? Mark stuttered for a second but then said it wasn't for him to say and told me to ask Sarah about it. I asked why he set me up if there was history there. And Mark just kind of went quiet but then said, honestly I didn't think he would act this way. I thought I was doing him a favor. Well, that confused me more than anything, so I texted Sarah and asked her to come over for dinner. She accepted and I planned on discussing it that evening. When she arrived, we kissed and the evening started rather pleasantly, but I was more nervous than our first date. I wasn't sure what this big secret was, but I knew it had the potential to do more than ruin our honeymoon period. It could destroy the relationship. She could see I was nervous and asked me what was going on. "What is your relationship with John and Mark?" I blurted it out and wish I could have had more tact. She looked at me for a minute, just like that first date when I thought she would cry. She started by telling me how she met Mark in high school and they had always been friends but nothing more. She deliberately didn't talk about John and I caught on rather quickly. Didn't John know Mark in high school too? She was silent for a few moments and then whispered yes. 2 tears ran down her cheek as she started talking about John. Her and John lived on the same street growing up and had been friends since before kindergarten. They would ride their bikes to the gas station, play games, catch lightning bugs, typical Midwest childhood stuff. They are each other's first kiss at 12 and Sarah said she had a crush on him since she could remember. John started acting different toward her as they got to middle school and then high school. John was attractive and played tennis and was outgoing while Sarah was more reserved, stayed indoors and was heavy. She was not attractive, no guys ever showed interest and John would ignore her at school, but at home, he acted like they were best friends. This went on from 8th grade until sophomore year when Sarah confessed her feelings one day and John used it to have sex with her. He ignored her even at home after that. Days later, John was dating a more popular girl and Sarah was left heartbroken. They dated for 6 months and when they broke up, John came to her at home and tried to rekindle the relationship. Sarah wasn't having it at first, but eventually she did and they went back to the normal of hanging out at home but ignoring her at school. He would get a girlfriend 3 months later and he ignored her, and this cycle went on all through high school and then continued into college when they both went to university in Champaign. At college it went a little differently. He would call her up and she would come over and she would cook him dinner and they'd have sex. He did this when he was single or when he was in a relationship. She was never in a relationship. Or in her mind, I guess she was in a relationship with him even if no one acknowledged it. She eventually got a boyfriend, but John didn't stop. He wanted to hang out, he would talk with her more in public. But as soon as she dumped him to date John, he flaked and went back to their old arrangement. This cycle then continued until she started seeing a therapist for her depression and realized just how terrible and toxic her relationship with John was, and while he treated her terribly, she had allowed it. So she decided to set boundaries with John and told him if they were going to continue seeing each other, it needed to be exclusive. This was a week before our date. When Mark contacted her, he implied that she would be meeting John, and it was at the dinner when she saw me that she realized that setting boundaries meant letting John go. When I complimented her, she realized what she had been missing out on for like 15 years and decided to actually, be on a date. John reached out a few days later with his normal shenanigans, but she blocked him. When she was done, I sat there stunned and she cried a lot. She kept apologizing and saying she knows how dumb she was, but she truly does like me and didn't know how to bring up the John stuff without scaring me away. I probably looked mad or something because she kept apologizing and asking me to say something. But all I could think about was how John always bragged about this girl he kind of controlled, and she would always give him a BJ and she begged him to reciprocate, but he never would. I always thought John was an ass for that, but always looked past it. I knew it was her. So without saying a word, I got down under the table on my knees, unbuttoned her jeans, pulled her underwear down and didn't stop until she came. She was panting hard and smiling. I just said, "Never apologize for those assholes again," and we went into the bedroom. Today I'm requesting a transfer to another department. I have such mixed emotions. I would never have met Sarah without them, but Mark and John are 2 of the worst people on the planet and I hope they stay single forever. They deserve no one. My coworkers set me up on a blind date. It went well, but they are acting weird about it. I, 34 am, separated from my wife in early 2023 and divorced in early 2024. It was a pretty nasty breakup and I moved to Chicago for a job to get away. I pretty much kept to myself at first, but was friendly with a couple coworkers, John 26M and Mark 26M. They were younger than me, but it was easier to bond with them as we were the only single guys in the office. We really hit it off this summer and hung out weekly, went to the Pitchfork Festival together and really started to click. I really felt like I was coming out of my shell. A month ago they were talking about their dating experiences and asked me about mine. I admitted I hadn't been on a date since my wife and they both kind of shut up and looked awkward. The next night we were out for drinks and they mentioned that they wanted to set me up with a friend of theirs, Sarah 26F. Mark showed me a picture of her on his phone and I thought she was cute and said okay. They both looked at each other with a weird smirk on their faces but agreed to set it up. I thought I knew what the look was about. She was a bigger girl and I'm a bigger guy, so it made sense to them. But maybe they were unsure if they were being rude or not. I thought she was cute though, so didn't bother me and let it slip out of my mind. We set it up for the next weekend and I went. When I arrived at the restaurant I spotted Sarah, waved and walked over, but it was weird. Sarah acted like she didn't know me and was here meeting someone else. I pulled out my phone and told her Mark had set up the date and showed her the text from him with her picture. She looked at the phone for a second and looked like she was going to cry. I quickly apologized and told her I would leave if she was uncomfortable. She paused for a second and then assured me we should continue the date. I'll be honest, the first 20 minutes I almost got up and left. She looked miserable. I have no idea what was going on, but she looked like she had just been told she was the worst person alive. I don't know what made me do it. I guess because it was going so poorly I just lost any nerves I had and was much more confident than I had been at the beginning of the date. Or maybe I just wanted to cheer her up. She was wearing a beautiful top that really showed off her cleavage, so at one point when she was about to cry again, I just leaned in and said, "I think you are absolutely beautiful in that top. I'm sorry if I keep staring, but everything about this makes me happy to be here." She stared at me for a second, blushed, smiled and actually became present for the date. We talked about her job, how she got to Chicago, how she had grown up with Mark and John. She mentioned she was trying to go through all the Criterion Collection films and we bonded over a shared goal of seeing them all and a shared annoyance that they add new films faster than we can watch them. After dinner we walked around downtown to the park and somehow stayed out until after midnight. I know because she was visibly upset about how to get home, so I offered my place that was within walking distance. Honestly, we didn't even have sex that night, we just talked and cuddled as we fell asleep. I told her about my divorce and how hurt I had been when I caught my wife blah, blah, blah. I hadn't actually said it out loud, but Sarah just made me comfortable. We have been together ever since and the relationship is better than it ever was with my wife. I know it's only been a month, but mark my words, I will marry this girl. But the reason I'm here is that Mark and John have been really weird about it. I asked Mark the next day why Sarah thought she was meeting someone else and he just said that Sarah didn't want a picture and he must have described me poorly. But when I talked about Sarah that Monday they both seemed off. They couldn't believe I had a good time and John has been really annoyed. Whenever I bring her up he leaves the room. They keep canceling on me too, mostly because I want to bring Sarah. We'll have plans and then when I say I want to bring her they will cancel. I think they might be jealous that I'm in a relationship. Not sure. I think I may bring this up with Sarah though and just see what's going on. The vibes have been super weird.